Hello again, grade 3s. This is Mr. Williams, and in this video we are going to talk about how to measure lines and objects and how to draw lines using a ruler. And before we begin, I have a picture of a ruler here, and every ruler is going to be a little bit different, and that's what I want to talk about first, because as you see with this ruler, um, you see that the 0 is in fact not at the end of the ruler. And so have a look at what ruler you might have around home and see, because if the 0 is at the end of the ruler, that's going to dictate where you start measuring. Because if you start measuring at the end of the ruler, which some people do, and start measuring here, even though the 0's here, it's going to be off. It's going to be off a little bit, and you're going to be measuring short all the time. And so let's make sure that you familiarize yourself with the ruler you're going to be using to determine where that 0 is, so that we don't have those errors in measurement. And so as you see on this ruler here, these big numbers are what we call centimeters, and we use the units there, short form for cm. And so we have 1 centimeter, 2 all the way up on this ruler would be 10. And the lines, small lines down here, are millimeters, and we'll get to that later on, of how white that look. And so again, kind of just, if you have 10 ones make up a unit of 10, 10 millimeters make up a unit of 1 centimeter. And so if we were going to look at drawing a line, you would obviously start at 0, and say we wanted to draw a line of 3 centimeters, that you would have your ruler down and start at the 0 as you measure all the way to 3. And so then there you have the line of 3. And again, if you're going to measure it, you can start at one end and work your way, and where does it end? There, ending there just at the 3. And so we have a line of 3 centimeters. If we were going to measure an object, what we want to do is, again, if I'm going to measure this object here, I might start at the end, and I'm going to see where it ends here. And as you can see, I've started it right at the end. That was 0, and right there at 6. So this crayon here would have a length of 6 centimeters. And remembering our units, that because it's here with the 6, that is 6 centimeters. And again, if we know that there are 10 millimeters in each centimeter, then we know that if we look here, that 1 centimeter here is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 millimeters. So 1 centimeter is also equal to 10 millimeters. And so if we look at that, then we would say that 2 centimeters would be equal to 20 millimeters. And so on our last question that we just did, it was 6 centimeters, that we could also say it was also equivalent to 60 millimeters. And so either or, we can have the units of millimeters, or we can have the units of centimeters, as long as you can change the unit, but also changing the length as well. So 1 centimeter, 10 millimeters, either or. It doesn't matter as long as you have the proper units for your measurement. And so let's head back up here now and draw a line. Now we've been working with ones that kind of end right on, the centimeters, 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 6, and so on. But what if it ends not there? And so if we have to, say, look at a line that starts at 0 and say ends right there. And so it's not on the 2, it's past 2 centimeters. So how are we going to write that? And so we are going to have to use, if staying in centimeters, using decimals. And so what we do is, just like you would with money, we have 2. And in this case, this is meaning the 2 for the centimeters. And we have a decimal here. And now we're looking at going into millimeters. And so how many millimeters passed? And so if we got 2 here, we got 1, 2. And so now we have 2 millimeters. And so there we go. Now, oftentimes people might write it as centimeters here, millimeters here. They might write it as 2 centimeters, 2 millimeters. But again, the short form for this is just like we would with money. We have 2 here. That means centimeters. The decimal here means we're going into millimeters. And so 2.2, and our unit is centimeters. Now again, if we wanted to use millimeters, again, we could do that. Well, we know that 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, and we know another centimeter is 10, and we have 2 more, which means then we have 22 millimeters for the length of our line. And so now let's go ahead here and measure our purple crayon and see what we get. And so as I move up here to the end, I'm going to put the ruler on the end of the object there. And again, if I can show here, we start at the back. And as we go, it's right there. And so again, we have 4 centimeters. And again, we're moving over 1, 2. And so we would have length of 4.2 centimeters. Let me rewrite that again. 4.2 centimeters. Or if we were looking at it in millimeters, 42 millimeters, because again, 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42 millimeters for this object. So it doesn't matter either or, centimeters, millimeters, but just making sure that we're writing it correctly with the decimal, if need be with centimeters, and without here when we're looking at it with millimeters. And so this will be important as we talk about in other videos about how do we go from centimeters to millimeters, or how do we go from millimeters to centimeters. And that will be covered in the next video. Take care.